Yes,
Okay.
sorry I didn't get to personally get to know you at all. I guess we'll do it on air here, but awesome to have you guys here. You guys are doing amazing work. You know, I saw you a little bit of your presentation that you did with the last thing. I don't even know what it was. I talked on it. Awesome.
Greater Reset.
You guys are doing amazing
The
work.
Greater Reset, Bear.
Okay, Greater Reset. Yeah, amazing presentation.
Thank you.
So this will be fun today.
Okay, guys, we're live. If we sound good, give us a thumbs up in the chat. We're doing a special Tuesday broadcast. This is not a normal time. Let me just announce on Telegram real quick that we're going live right now. Just so we get as many people in here as we can. And really excited to go into this today. This is a topic that's close to our hearts, Bear and I, our hemp hearts, especially since that's one of the core constituents in our life force protein, Bear.
That's right. So if we have any leftover protein, we can build something.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hit record and fire this bad boy up. Here we go. And boom, we're back for another episode of Alfacast. I'm Mike Winter, and I'm here as always with the powerful Dr. Bear Paul Lando, coming to you live and direct from still snowing Smith River. It's April, and it literally was snowing an hour ago. We're trying to snow. Flakes were coming down, Bear. My neighbor, who's been here for 71 years, is saying this is the coldest on record he can remember, coldest year of his whole life up here in Gasky. I don't know. I would take that experience over any analytics you get online. So, you know, our buddies that we've had on that talking about the grand solar minimum and climate control and all that, it's seems to be reigning true more than ever. So, pretty wild. I
grew up in Northern California in this neck of the woods, and you know, I've been around for at least 40 years now. So I don't remember it ever being like this.
Yeah.
Not even close. It doesn't snow, you know, this close to the coast.
Yeah, it's been pretty wild, and record snow in Mammoth, I heard this year, in the Sierras, just getting dumped on. So if you're into snow sports, you're stoked. If you're a farmer, it's getting a little stressful. We were talking about the importance of greenhouses years ago, and that's becoming more and more apparent than ever. So today we're going to be touching on agriculture and building and our favorite plant, hemp. Very exciting. Real quick, just a reminder, go to musicandsky.com if you want to hang out with Bear and I and Kelly Brogan and Marty Leeds and Eileen McCusick and Zuby and Steve Headflux, all these amazing people we have this summer. The Alfa Vedic booth will be going. I'm very excited about that, Bear. Speaking of hemp, we will have our life force protein horchatas kicking, which do have a hemp base in them. So very excited. Go to music
fruit seeds.
And fruit seeds, yes.
And herbs.
And herbs and mushrooms and all the good stuff.
And other things. Yeah.
And adaptogen mushrooms, not the psychoactive
since
mushrooms.
We have a hemp theme going on here today, should we do a Joe Rogan and roll up a spliff while we talk, or what should we do here?
As long as it's a non-THC psychoactive joint, Bear.
I've never had anything psychoactive in my entire life.
Never. No, let's get lit. Where's the bong? Let's take some bong rips. Yeah, no, definitely fan of everything involved with the cannabis sativa plant. And one last thing, Bear, just a reminder, speaking of cannabis, because there'll be a lot being smoked at this event. I'll be in Nashville, June 3rd, 4th.
I can't go there then.
DJing, check that out. I'll put it all in the show notes below. Come hang out. It's going to be a freedom event, supporting artists And Alex Zek will be there. You guys just bumped in. Imani and River are with us today. They're at the Independent National Conference right now in Austin. They just bumped into Alec, who's speaking about, I think, governance or independent sovereignty and governance there with people like Derek Bros. I know we're just mentioning Zach Bush is there, Charles Eisenstein. So that's cool, man, that they're having, these alternative conferences that aren't the typical left-right. It's good that we're seeing this development, and I'd like to hear a little bit more about it from our guest today. Before I jump into the quick intro, Bear, anything else?
No, we're good. Let's go for it. Like we were saying before, this is a great subject matter because it's what we're all about. It's about, self-sufficiency and, living on the land. And like I think I read from your site, it's not just about returning to the land, but it's knowing what the heck to do once you get there and how to live on the land. And I think that's kind of what you guys are about, what we're about. So this would be a great conversation. I have a little hempcrete experience I'll share with you later too.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great to be here with you too.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, the Alfa Vedic permaculture-based co-op is a twofold mission. AV Garden's farm-based business was designed to provide I have a trouble with this word, Bear. Replicable, is that right? Self-funding prototype as our contribution.
Very good.
Replicable.
Since you're from a parochial education, I knew you'd figure it out.
Self-funding prototype as our contribution to the imperative need for a decentralized culture built upon a foundation of conscious communities. Secondly, we understand the import of creating a global talent pool of experts in the fields of biodynamic agriculture, alternative building, and bioterrain medicine. In recent months, Alfacast has entertained a steady stream of innovators from far-off lands, including those industrious souls making change happen right here in the lower 50. On this Alfacast, we continue this timely thread with renowned bioarchitect Paul River Richardson and his partner and hemp visionary Imani Mamalution, the creators of Haven Earth and the Haven Earth Trade School. Quote, "Our responsibility as designers, builders, and consumers is to make the changes we wish to see in the world." Paul is an international pioneer in the bioarchitecture space with an uncanny ability to translate his long career in the design and construction industry into regenerative building solutions. Imani is a mother, educator, and author who homeschooled her 5 home-birth daughters in her organic cafe over a decade ago. Together, they have created a comprehensive online course that takes you step by step through the process of building with hempcrete. Quote, "At Haven Earth, you'll master the art of hemp building with beautiful ecological designs that inspire how we dwell on the planet and work towards localized agrarian models that support a cohesive move back to the land." Imani and Paul are freedom-loving pioneers who believe the best way to secure our sovereignty is through innovation, problem solving, and up-leveling our skills that are required for the times ahead so that the old system becomes obsolete. And how ironic is we're using literally the oldest, one of the oldest plants to be grown to do that. We are passionate about educating and inspiring people of all ages to build a future that honors nature's principles and serves the highest good of all. It's not about just returning to the land, but how we do it that matters. We do have in the show notes links to their website and also the class they offer. We have a special offering there, so please check the show notes below. Bear Lando, take it away.
Great. Well, hey, you guys, thanks for being with us. This is awesome. Really looking forward to it. And I know you guys are at an event there, so we're going to kind of jump into it so we have plenty of time with you guys. I had a little bit of hempcrete experience, at least for 2 days. I have a friend here over on the coast in Crescent City, and he built a large structure. So I went over there and donated a few hours. So I got the hang of how you work with that stuff, and it's awesome. And if you could see the finished product, the building he made, it's a whole business center. It has areas inside where they can do all their work, which is processing the food they grow and herbs and things, and a whole little meeting and arts center and everything. And it's really cool. And it's all made out of hemp. So I was kind of impressed, and it was really fun putting it together. It's great. It's sort of like playing with mud pies when you're a kid. So you guys are the experts. So if you could maybe start a little bit, when I was doing your bio and everything, I didn't see the thing that you sent in the mail. So I kind of put together some stuff. So I probably didn't do justice. And so if you could maybe fill in any gaps that I left there and tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're at, how you got into all this, either one of you fine. And then we'll get right into the technology.
Yeah, well, you did a great job, Bear. That was pretty impressive. So I think even better than what we would have written. But
my grammatical errors notwithstanding.
Yeah, everything was great. But
the grammar police came out and nailed me on a little thing. We're kind of laughing about that before. So anyway, Go ahead.
River and I met like almost 2 years ago at the beginning of the pandemic. I was hosting a lot of conversations with Sasha Stone. We were doing a lot of live streams like this, really bringing some of the most relevant conversations of the time with the truth tellers that were out there speaking out. So we met through that platform. We were having behind the scenes conversations as people were trying to navigate through understanding what was really happening at this time. And as you know, I've kind of mentioned to Mike when we saw him at the Greater Reset, my book that I wrote 10 years ago was kind of a cathartic rant to put together, to connect the dots in my own mind as a mother of children of how we arrived here and needing to understand that. And that kind of led me to connect with G. Edward Griffin and Del Bigtree and Sasha Stone, a lot of the people that we were, bringing out the voices. And now we sort of all have kind of networked ourselves together. But that, I think the significant thing with River and I is that we both had, decades before kind of coinciding our meeting together a couple of years ago of doing this work and laying the foundation for what we're doing today. And I think River will speak to the fact that this hemp plant, we believe, is here for humanity at this particular time. And like you mentioned, Mike, it's been here forever. But I think there's a significance in that it's now being available for us to actually use this plant as a connector plant. So it brings us all together. And that's what we found. Even though I came in it from more of the medicinal side, River was doing it more from the building side as a new innovative material to build healthy hemp homes with. My experience in raising my children in my cafe was all about health and wellness. So it was a perfect solution to the answer that as a mom, I was looking for, like, how do we create these healthy homes without having to replace carpets and paint and put in air filtration systems? So it was like, wow, we can build these houses with hemp and solve all of those problems. And then the interesting thing is that it's what we've realized is, I think one of our good friends had mentioned, hemp is a gateway crop, and it's allowing us to be in between the worlds. Like River and I have talked about, we're in between the timelines. Haven Earth is the bridge between the timeline and the new timeline we're trying to get to. So that's kind of a short story of like how we kind of came together, and the River obviously has his own.
Yeah, and mine really coming from, I came from UK, I studied architecture there, and then I ended up in the US, married, and worked in the regular world of construction for about a decade up in the Northeast, and it was great experience. But I think, and it was around 2008, that time that I started getting woken up to the reality of what was happening in the world, and through the solar minimum and all of these other things. So that kind of shifted me, because at that time I was doing a lot in the green movement. I was making the companies I was working for doing recycling programs, chain of custody, where we're getting materials, all of this kind of stuff. And then starting to get information about this alternative reality that was going on in the control grid that was coming down the wire. And then that ended up kind of dissolving my marriage a lot, because I woke up and it shifted me into a different way. And then 2011, I went overseas to work internationally, building big hotels and this kind of thing, even further away from what I wanted to do, or what I thought my purpose was. And, I was working for elites, essentially, building these big hotels, very high-end projects in different countries: Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Malaysia, Asia. I traveled over 30 countries in about a decade, and working for some big architectural firms and project management companies. And it was really great for me to understand how to get things done, how to be able to execute on large scale projects, multi-million-dollar projects. But at the same time, I had this kind of internal conflict that I knew something was needing to change in the world, and how could I bring my skills? So in 2017, I ended up going to a workshop in Africa, in South Africa, at Alosha Linov's place at Bioterrain, who you had on the recently. And what I saw there was the empowerment that come from being at a workshop space. That I was even nervous to go to a workshop because I'd never really built anything before until that point. I'd designed it, I'd showed other people how to build it, and then going to this workshop. So I had this real experience, but like, wow, we can actually make the changes we want in the world. And so I ended up quitting everything in my life at that time. And I went on this, kind of hero's journey to find myself. And that's where I came up, kind of Haven Earth was like the kind of seed of that idea of creating this transition back to nature. And then ended up traveling with Alosha. We went to Russia, looking at like some of the Anastasia communities, and also in the US, looking at what was working, what wasn't working, and how Haven Earth could be this bridge, and how could we fill that void to be able to get things done. And one thing I noticed was, even on these super expensive projects, the issue was getting skilled people. You even, doesn't matter how much money you have, if you don't have people with the skills to be able to build it, then the money's worth nothing. So Haven Earth and the idea of creating a trade school was really the genesis of what we're doing now. And then I found hemp up in the mountains in Switzerland at a hemp house I ended up staying at with Jürgen Hempel, who was one of the kind of grandfathers of hemp in Europe.
That's actually his name.
Yeah, Hempel is his last name. I don't know if he changed it at some point, but for 2 weeks up in the mountains, there was no heat on in the house. And we were in shorts and t-shirts the whole time, and it felt like fresh air. I had this kind of sea change for myself in terms of, wow, what this plant was really doing, creating this kind of ecosystem inside of a home that felt like outside, that it was insulative, that it was breathing. This was contrary to everything I'd learned in the regular world of construction, which was all about sealing the buildings as tight as possible, pumping in mechanical systems, and basically just keeping all of them toxin VOCs and all of that inside of the space for us to enjoy for the rest of our short-lived life. and so then I came back to the US in 2019 and I knew I had to get back to the States for a number of reasons, but one of them was for my family and my kids who were in the US. But I knew something was coming as well. I think we all kind of had a sense something was changing. And so I built a hemp house in California in Mendocino County.
I have a few slides if you guys want to see I don't know if you've seen that one yet.
But before that, I actually went to Turkey and built the first earth bag home in Turkey in 2018. And it became kind of a bit of a sensation in Turkey, to the point where the local mayor actually came and rewrote the building code in the area so we could get a permit, because it was on international news. It was on the cover of Vogue magazine in Turkey. And then
there, can you see that? I think you guys, we can't.
Yep, you're looking good.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, I came back to the States 2019, and after being in Switzerland, working with hemp ecosystems out there, and we decided to present a design for what we were calling the tiny hemp home, which wasn't so tiny. But as you can see in the image there, and Discovery Channel kind of were following me at that time and wanted to document one of the builds, and it just so happened it lined up with this project. And so it was kind of my launch back into the US under a different banner, which was really around hemp and around sovereignty and creating, these pathways back to nature.
The whole tiny home movement, it's an interesting movement. I've followed it, and I have tons of books, with builders that are doing that. And, I think it's important for us to distinguish between the tiny home movement and stack and pack. Because what I'm looking at with your structures, they're not only organic and good for your health, but extremely elegant. What you lack in space, you just gain so much more in other ways. And, we have some building projects here where we're making smaller structures to accommodate living, business, and everything. And it's just so much more of an intelligent design with just when you have to, from the start, plan on not wasting space and have everything functional. And then you go back, my dad built our house that I grew up in a long time ago. And back then, it wasn't what you guys are describing, but there wasn't as many toxic materials. And also it was more of a craftsman style where everything was kind of built in and
Right.
artistic. And so, the last comment, and then that's all I want to say, is that we have a real scarcity of tradespeople. Just if you want to have anything from electrical to carpentry or whatever, there's just not many people. And I really believe the next wave of wealth will be created through the trades, the people that are now refining their way back to the trades. But I think a lot of what has turned people off of the trades, it's just become this rote formula of, just go down to the Home Depot and, come back with a load of drywall and horrible insulation and all these kinds of things. But what you guys are doing is really stimulating the imaginations, of young people, I think, to get back in. And of course, rather than go through what we would think of as orthodox channels to just learn the same old thing, your school is, really setting the pace for, I think, where we need to go and where we are going. So please continue.
So there's a couple of things that you just mentioned, Bear. So, one, I came from a family of bricklayers. And so the idea of building our own homes for me is kind of inherently natural. But I do think River's skill, and I can show some of the master plans because we've been traveling to hundreds of cities, thousands of miles since we met, settled just recently in Texas and looking to secure the first land for the first physical trade school in Tennessee. But one of the things that is his gift is really having this elegant style. And he really talks a little bit negative about tiny homes in the sense that why should we be confined space? However, what you said is really important, the way we maximize space and really can leverage that in a way that is beneficial and doesn't make us feel like we're somehow being insignificant, but it's more in this relationship with nature, right? Like, how do we build homes that actually work with nature? And I think that because hemp is a breathing home system, it doesn't give us this constricted feeling. It actually gives us an expanded feeling. And then River often does designs that have nature, like it makes you feel like you're connected to nature. So I can show some of this. And then the last thing I'll just say, and then hand it to River, is about this workforce, because coming from Europe, you've often said that they have a different idea about the trades in Europe than we do here in the States.
Especially Germany, yeah.
Yeah. So I'll pull pictures and you can talk to that.
Yeah, exactly. It was really interesting being on these big projects and seeing how, these building hotels, especially, 3 to 8 year projects, a long time, that mostly was very entropic. And a lot of health issues came up for people working on the building sites. A lot of people left, a lot of companies folded. It was really kind of distressful in a way. And I was really on the client side a lot of the time. So in some ways I kind of felt like part of that. And, we were bringing in workers from all over the world to try and fill the gap. And I was like, why aren't they training their local? Why aren't they training their country people? Why isn't that happening? Why isn't there a focus on that? Because that would transform a lot of this. And then, seeing these LEED gold certified projects and these Energy Star rated and all of these buzzwords actually are just a big scam, basically, to make people feel good and make people with money feel like they're doing something for the environment. As we all know, that's really not the case. So I think the true regenerative architecture is really on a localized level. And I think that's really what drew me to hemp, was that, this is something that we can grow. This is something that doesn't need to be in this huge manufacturing kind of way. And
So
you know, the tiny home movement for me also feels like another kind of contortion of getting back to the land and having a smaller footprint, let's say. And really, it seems to be directed towards a more, you know, kind of Chinese model in a way that we really shouldn't have any ownership, and that we should just, you know, have minimal space with just a bed and these kind of things. Although I am building a hemp tiny home right now,
yeah.
it serves a purpose, and as long as we're aware of that purpose, and it doesn't take over, because what's happening in the regular building industry is, you know, kind of contorted too, and like you said, Bear, that's why everyone's going to Home Depot and getting all these building materials, because it all fits in with the whole narrative of the building industry and the permitting and the regulations.
So this is one of the designs for property in Texas, and it's really kind of what we call more of an agrocentric model, so that the focus is around the regenerative agriculture and food sovereignty, growing our own food. Just to kind of give an idea of this, when we talk about how we return to the land. So our focus is around natural building, but we're bringing in and collaborating with a lot of people that have the permaculture backgrounds. And I think Rivers master plans have this lean towards that tendency, because we go and we're on the land, listening to the land. What is the land? You know, what would work best with the land? And that's really one of his, I think, special gifts. And so it leads us to some of the designs, just so you can get an idea. These are his hand drawings that kind of give that elegant style that you mentioned, Bear, sort of this
beautiful, beautiful.
yeah, earthship / meets hemp home kind of thing. This is one of the ones we were just working on we did a presentation at Texas A&M. This is sort of the future of the biohouse modular home system. So just to give a history for the people who are just maybe hearing about hemp for the first time, you know, when he built that house for the Discovery Channel a couple of years ago, the hemp came in from Europe, and so did all the binders. So just in the last few years, the hemp industry, so we're talking about industrial hemp, and we just came back from the big hemp expo last week. Hemp is now being grown in the States. It's now being processed. Processors are coming online. And the big thing now, of course, is everybody's racing to create the structural hemp block or panel system. And that's what we've been waiting for. But knowing that we had to educate people first, why would you want to live in a healthy hemp home? Well, obviously, mold is a huge issue for so many people, including myself, that are dealing with all of the toxins in the environment. So for the issue of molds being fire resistant, pest resistant, being that breathing system that we talked about, and maybe you can kind of describe that, because people are like, well, why can't I build a cob house or aircrete, or even people who are returning to the land, returning in maybe a temporary structure that is actually toxic and in contrast to what they're trying to do and why they're returning to the land. So it's been an education process. Like when I opened my organic cafe 20 years ago, nobody knew what organic foods or genetically modified foods were, right? So we know that there's like that period of time where we have to educate so that we can be conscious consumers and actually understand what's happening, not a band-aid solution where we're greenwashing, which is the danger of what's going to happen with the hemp industry if people don't become educated. It can be greenwashed into a carbon credit agenda, which is not the revolutionary aspect of what this material, this plant is here to do for us. So we're really passionate about keeping it in the hands of the people. And to do that, we have to educate people about why you would want to build with hemp. So it's kind of, you know, simple, but at the same time, as you all know, it takes time to make those changes in how we perceive things. So, you know, there's going to be communities like this one that they're looking to. Is this a company that's trying to bring in a new energy system that are going to do developments with hemp? All of that's going to come down the line. But how do we keep it and make it accessible to those of us that are, you know, freedom loving people that want to return to the land and be able to have one of these healthy hemp homes? And that's where we feel like creating these biohouse modular hemp homes that can go up easily and be either DIY or a team of people that we help train to be able to make this possible.
Yeah, I think it comes down to free. I was just going to say, Barrett, comes down to freedom as always. And I know people get triggered by the tiny home idea with the scarcity pushing kind of inversion of freedom, and like the need to, you know, sequester carbon and make sure our foot, you know, stamp on the land is remediated to be as tiny as possible. But really, as Bear was saying, when you have the freedom and you have the consciousness to understand how we connect to the land, it's not about ownership. It's about taking care of the land and then having the freedom to choose how you want to engage with that. And if you're truly conscious, and also you have the added benefit of not having to deal with building permits so much, you can do really amazing things with tiny structures and how you can create awesome sort of compatibility with nature. But I will say that one you were showing right there, Imani, did look like a stack and pack kind of in there. I was personally like, oh,
Yeah.
But the one thing I'll say about hemp, because people are asking in the chat right now, like why hemp versus like sorghum or even sugar cane or aircrete, etc. And I will say, we're talking about total regeneration and also total sovereignty. The hemp plant gives you everything, gives you nutrition, it gives you soil remediation. It is extremely easy to grow, and it's like one of the strongest fibers. There's a reason why Thomas Jefferson said hemp. I think he said hemp is the first necessity to the wealth and protection of the country. He knew that back then because it really is one of the most amazing plants in the world. Can't stress that enough.
Yeah.
And in the early days of this country, of course, it was mandatory that everybody tilled a certain portion of their land for hemp because they realized a growing nation was really dependent on it. The only point I was going to make, and Mike, you kind of did it for me, but I think the thing we have to shift in this, what you folks are up to here, is to go from the scarcity model, because the whole greening thing is built on scarcity and this whole consciousness that there's not enough. However, you know, when you live like we do here and you grow things and they just magnificently supply you with everything you need, way more than you need, beyond abundance. And you're talking about a hemp that grows literally like a weed. You know, it's renewable. And if you're aware of good tilling techniques, then you're not going to burn out the soil in the process, which is one unfortunate thing that happened with the cannabis industry. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this, but I didn't want to interrupt your flow with the building. But what do you see as far as the hemp growers? How can we maybe work with them so it just doesn't turn into like the cannabis thing, which just became a big greed fest?
Yeah, I'll come back to that, Bear, because
Okay.
that is extremely relevant, I think, right now. But to your point, Mike, I think what I experienced doing the natural building workshop in Africa, we were building with aircrete and super adobe, and both amazing techniques, and recommend everybody learn them. Great building techniques. But as we were building, it was really interesting because we were all saying we should do this with hemp, and none of us had even really understood what it was. So there was this interest in that there was this vibe at the workshop that somehow hemp was on the horizon, and it was, you know, kind of ironic that it was one of the guys at that workshop that ended up bringing me to Switzerland to have my first hemp home experience. And you know, I think it's when it's top down, we're dictated to. Just like the hemp plant was eradicated from our culture and so many other things, that's when we understand that it's obviously good for us when we're not allowed to do it. So obviously
I always joke it was a class 1, right, drug or whatever, because it's so dangerous, because it allows us to grow our own food and make our own plants and make our own clothes.
Right. And our friend Evan Folds always said, he's an agronomist, said that, you know, hemp's a gateway back to our food, because actually the way we look at hemp and the way we test it is about how pure it is. And we don't do that with our food generally. So it was just really interesting. And there's a frequency with hemp that I think we've said there's a reason that it's come back at this time, because we're ready to receive it. And it's a tool for us to move into freedom and decentralized systems. And I think that's what's happening in the hemp space in the US right now, is that the processing is coming online. This was kind of the stopgap. It was like, you can't grow hemp if there's no way to process it into anything useful. So they're relying on basically an old system of doing things, which is a mill, which is typically derived from a cotton mill, which goes through a process of decortication, and it was always about getting the fiber. The fiber was the gold with the hemp industry, and the biomass which we used in the buildings was just a waste product. So now there's multiple things that are coming out of these processing facilities, including the dust for plastics and stuff like that. There's the fiber, obviously, which is good for textiles and ropes and all kinds of things, and panels and things like that. And then you've got the hemp hurd, which is the from the inner part of the stalk. So this decortication process, like a mill, it separates the fiber from that inner woody core of the plant. And that woody core of the plant is kind of spongy, and it's very porous. It's hygroscopic and hydrophilic. So it's able in the wall system, when you mix it with lime and pozzolans, to create this kind of Roman type cement, it has this ability to hold moisture. So they say a hemp wall can hold 3 times its weight in moisture. And that is, we're trying to get a house permitted in California right now, in Santa Clara, in San Jose, and it's been nearly 18 months just to try and get a permit for a small addition, because they don't understand. They want us to put a waterproof membrane on the outside of the house. I'm like, that's going to defeat the whole point. The whole point is that it deals with moisture. It's able to take the vapor in the air inside the space and kind of hold it in the wall and release it back out when the conditions are right for it. Whereas our regular construction system is all about sealing it as tight as possible so nothing can get in, which is great in theory, but there's inevitably some water always gets in, some vapor gets in. And so then in your wall cavities, you have the growth, a buildup of mold. And then because it's a sealed box, how do you deal with that? How do you clean that air inside? So people put HEPA filters in and all kinds of stuff. But this sick building syndrome is an epidemic. And especially now that we're getting forced to spend more time indoors in general and all of these kind of things, I think it's more important than ever that we shift this narrative around how we think about a home. Because I think, coming from my background of working with high-end clients and making things look really beautiful, at the end of the day, what's behind the panel and behind the thing is still the same moldy environment that's creating this unhealthy, unstable type of living environment. So with hemp, I think it's, as it's doing something for our understanding of food and of health, but also for me as an architect, it's allowing us to open up that discussion about how we look at our homes, and not just 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a study, but how do I create a healthy environment for living? And maybe you
well, and that last plan is kind of showing where it's going, like, because it's coming online, like it's going to become mainstream. And so it's really about us having an understanding of why we want people who are looking to get away from that model to incorporate this incredible material into building. And it is, as River mentioned before, it's the frequency of it that differentiates, I think, from like a cob house, where it's more that earth. That what we've been told from Vedic friends of ours is that the frequency of the cob actually reduces, whereas hemp increases. And if you're in that, probably when you were in that house too, Bear, like, it has more of a cozy feeling, not like this kind of cold, chill kind of feeling where you get in some of these structures that are earth-based. And I know that I wasn't there in South Africa, but the aircrete, again, we've heard, and you experienced it, people get sick in the process of building those homes because it's still concrete, right? And these are the particles that are in the air, and you're literally aerating concrete to create these really cool looking domes, because we get that a lot, in addition to like, how much does it cost? But so that, I think those are really good points to bring people back. And also what's available. The industry is trying to move away from concrete, and those big industries, which they're massive, are pivoting to these new materials, and in essence will be hijacking it, just like everything else that we know that happens. So again, keeping it into the power of the people moment here with hemp, not just to regenerate the soil, but to actually build ourselves healthy homes. And with that, I think Rivers said many times, this is the first time as an architect I've gone to the farm to get the materials to build the house. We're working with farmers, we're working with the processors, we're working with other builders, because we know that we have to work with all of them to make this movement happen. Like, we can't build the homes if we don't have the materials. And we're not even necessarily building the homes, we're designing them and teaching people how to build them. And that's why, why we started the trade school, is to have someone send someone in your community or your contractor and open their eyes that there's a different way to build your home. We have had several people send their people to our trainings that they can go back, and our online course is designed for that. We've captured content from the last 2 builds. We'll be doing the next build, and we're walking them through and doing live Q&A. So if you're getting ready to do add an addition or build a home, have your contractor get educated on this new material, because it's the similar framing. You're just putting a different material in the infill of the walls, because a lot of people don't understand, how are you building a hemp house? You're still, right now, even though the timber frame and maybe the blocks will pop in there, but you're basically replacing the insulation. I'm getting good at this, the drywall and the
sheathing,
labor,
the plywood,
all of that stuff,
house wrap, the glues, the all of these things, that make up the wall assembly.
Well, I think the most important point you make is that, you talk about frequency. My approach to plant medicine has always been through resonance. I don't buy the concept that there's little molecules that, override your molecules, and then, that's how plants work. No, it's about compatible resonance. And then we find the resonance that we need to create any effect or balancing effect that we need if we're trying to use that to, heal our bodies. And in the case of hemp, you have a living element. Sure, it has its roots in the ground, but it's reaching up to the heavens. And when I look at a particular herb, I look at its temperament, its characteristics as far as how it grows, and then it tells you more about its personality and why it might be good for particular bodies in certain situations. So with the hemp plant also, not only, can we, what a wonderful concept to live within the resonance of that living element. And even when you fixate it, with other different agents to make it into, how it's going to work with walls, that resonance still stays there. And, it still imparts, that to whoever's in there. And with hemp, I think it's even more remarkable as a plant because it shares the same endocrine hormonal functions or endocannabinoid, systems that we have in humans. So obviously there's a real symbiotic relationship between humans and the hemp plant. And I just wanted to make that point because I think that's so critical for people to just understand that what they're surrounded with is actually bombarding them with waveforms. And, in this case, you're picking waveforms that are going to create health and everything that we want in our life.
I was just going to say too, the word canvas comes from cannabis. So, it is the canvas that we can work on all aspects of the art of our life.
Right. Yeah. There's something about this plant that really speaks to freedom and I think really speaks to the future of humanity, actually. And we see it with the young ones, especially, 12, 13, 14. We see these kids who look at the world right now and wonder what this is, and where their place is in it, and what can they do to shift the world. But they're getting kind of,
well, they feel they're getting hopelessness,
right, and they're getting co-opted.
But when you talk about hemp, they get very excited.
Yeah, it's almost like the educational system and everything they hear is about all their parents have destroyed the planet, and it's climate crisis, it's all crisis, and I think this plan is really like that olive branch that people can get excited about because it's revolutionary in so many ways, even though it's not rocket science. It's really bringing us back to a relationship with agriculture that is inspiring people and inspiring the young ones to think, wow, I could design a rocket ship that's made with hemp. Like, these kind of thoughts can come into their imagination because it is so versatile. And, especially us being in this industry and, kind of circling around people who are leaders in the field, to really see that there is a lot of collaboration going on
And innovation.
and a kind of a healthy kind of competition, I think. But what we're really aware of is that this could change very rapidly with this carbon agenda, with this carbon neutral and all of these type of things. We do know that there's some government type of stuff coming down the pipeline based on nature-based materials, nature-based solutions. They're kind of starting to coin this type of terminology. And I think it's really about, they want to funnel money into this industry so they can control it, one. And secondly, take away the real benefit of it, which is about health and it's about decentralization, and put this into another agenda, which is about saving the planet, which doesn't need saving, as we know. And what's happening is the competition that's starting to shift into this space where they're not focused on the health benefits as much.
They're focusing on carbon credits.
They're focusing on the carbon credits. And so, I was speaking at a panel at this Hemp conference in Colorado last week, and everybody's talking about the carbon credits. And I said, this is the wrong pathway for this plant. This is not what it is about. And we need to keep our focus on that. This is about decentralization, and this is about the health of people's homes. Because because they think that, oh no, but there's a climate crisis, it doesn't really matter, we just need to get it. It's better than the other option.
It's
keep
not cement. It doesn't matter if it's breathing, when you're
Right.
adding all these additives to these blocks and panels.
So we really feel strongly of creating a model of not only building with hemp, but getting back to the land in terms of using the plant and the education around this and all of this interest in it as a way to create a type of community model that has a residential component, that has an economic component and an educational component, and with hemp as kind of the anchor and that kind of connecting element that kind of brings people together. Because I think the idea of just going back to the land and growing food is great, but I think we need purpose. We're like purposeful people, and without a real purpose and a real positive outlook for the future, it's hard to go out there and plant food every day, because what's the point? So we're really trying to create a really positive vision of the future, where actually we're creating a parallel society. We're holding the line for this plant, for this opportunity right now to move into a new paradigm, which is around resonance, around frequency, around all these amazing things we're talking about, because it's allowing for this opportunity. And we kind of feel like, it's like we're freedom fighters for agriculture, for the building
Hemp is
industry.
our cover crop.
Yeah.
It's a great story,
another wonderful side effect is that it is producing a whole freedom movement, not just for the fact that, returning to the land, but like you already mentioned, you run into the permitting, the code inspectors and all that. And so a lot of people are really delving into, well, why do these people have the authority to tell us, what we can build? And the fact is they don't. But by contract, through our warranty deeds, that's what, we grant them the authority to come harass us. I'm doing a vermiculture outhouse here on the property here, and next week. And, if I went and asked for a permit or something, it's like, forget about it, even though it would be the most intelligent design for, waste management imaginable. So what a lot of us have learned is that, wow, why don't we just, rather than fight with them, rather than comply, because, that's not freedom, and freedom is health. You can't separate the two. On the other hand, let's get rid of those deeds. Where did they come from? So people are really getting knowledgeable. Well, let's revert back to our original title. Then you don't have to deal with permitting agencies, taxation, property tax, all that sort of thing. So to build a parallel society, of course, I think, it's not good enough to say, well, those guys, are making us do something, so we rebel. It's just like, no, they don't have the authority in the first place. So we have the responsibility to learn how they do it, learn how not to comply without being combative, and then doing whatever the heck we want. Otherwise, it's just going to grow into another monopolized industry where we'll have to go to Home Depot to get our hempcrete that'll probably be laden with all sorts of crap that we don't want in there in the first place.
Exactly. And that's really, as much as we talk about teaching people how to build with hempcrete, we're also teaching people about the new infrastructures that we're building out this new society with. So that's why we set up Haven Earth as a private membership association. And as we set up our, we have a land checklist. We've worked with many land stewards, and that's one of the things in our models is working with an existing land steward who actually knows the land. But there's certain things, the criteria that we've had to establish a school. And one of those is being in an agricultural area where we're not hiding out, but we're being part of it and being an asset to the community and working in partnership with them and in a place where we are wanted. And also there's no zoning or requirements because we're setting it up in a trust. So we're not participating consciously in that system. So the same time we're teaching people that process who are looking to return to the land, how to do it in a way that isn't going to be duplicating or what we're trying to get away from. And I think that that's a really important piece, Bear, that we have to do it in a different way. A lot of people are returning to the land and think they might be doing it differently, but in a sense, they're going to be maybe in the same place. So that being in the realm of the private versus the public is absolutely critical for us. And then being in an agricultural area where we can use already existing infrastructure. A lot of these agricultural areas have been abandoned. People are returning to them. And then obviously things like water and what are the infrastructures, not just a piece of raw land to say, hey, we got land, but what is that land? Is that land a piece of land that is wanting to be inhabited and can it be working harmoniously with what we're trying to do, setting up the school? And then I think the other unique thing about us is that we're going to be teaching people to build houses. So we'll be building the residential area as we're training people, right? And then we would hopefully be able to create this as a duplicatable, scalable model that would inspire others to do it in their area so that we can show people like you guys are doing what's possible.
Right. And I also add to that, it's like, you can't blame people in a lot of ways because the education has been really hard to come by of alternatives. So, somebody buys a piece of land, they base it on, the real estate agent who tells them it's a good piece of land and etc. It's a clean title and all of these things. And then they get on the land and they find a local contractor, and that local contractor is used to doing things in a certain way. So he's only going to recommend certain things to them. And so they kind of, without really realizing it, they're just perpetuating the old model. They're going to get their permits. They're going to do all these things. But interestingly, there's the land that we're in close relationship with right now in Tennessee. We're very excited about starting to build the school out. A local farmer there, he's a generational farmer, and he basically has gone to the kind of Joel Salatin farming method and raising animals, and he's saying
his family's commercial chicken operation is completely transitioned,
right. And I think he was saying that all the old farmers are kind of dying out. They're getting too old to really farm anyway. And the newer ones that are coming in to the area, he's saying, is they all want to do it differently. They're all getting smaller pieces of land, 10, 15, 20 acres, and they really want to do regenerative agriculture. He's saying there's nobody coming and asking him about the old methods. I mean, the monoculture methods and that stuff. They all really want to do the regenerative. So I think there's a lot of people are wanting it. And I think we just need to create the models right now to give people them tools and all of that. And the online, I think, is really important. And that's obviously something you're doing too, because a lot of people don't have that luxury of leaving their family or their jobs or whatever to go and do workshops. But
well, and if they have building skills, and I can actually show you guys that. So if people want to go to that, but I know you're going to put the links in there, but one of the things, like even river building, he said he was a designer, not a builder, but when he's looking online to find how to do something, there's literally nothing on how to build with hemp out there. There might be a few videos of like people who built hemp structures, but
hemp builders are not the most social media savvy.
But that's at havenearthtradschool.net. But we're basically creating the live aspect so people can have a Q&A. So it's like you're getting the videos and we're continuing to add content to that. But it's like how to put in a window with hemp, not just like how to hemp. That's what we teach in like a 2-week workshop, but like how do you actually finish a hemp house.
Right.
Those are the kinds of things that really are quite difficult, especially if you don't have any skills. So the exciting thing for us is that people who have gone through our training and people who are in our training that are actually building hemp houses. And that's for us, the real success stories is like, can we create something that's going to allow people to actually do it, you know? And so I think that's making the education for me. I'm an educator at heart. And that's the thing that we share is like, we've got to give people the access to the resources and the knowledge to make that happen.
I think another skill set involves learning how to repurpose things. You know, we have a number of new buildings here and they're very aesthetic and nice and feel good. But then when it comes to windows and doors and things like that, it's all repurposed stuff that, you know, that we finish, make it look really custom and then throw it in there. So we don't just go down to the home improvement, you know, and buy new stuff. And I think that's really catching on too. There's actually like homes for habitat, places like that, where you can actually go into a place and buy old stuff. So a good combination, I think.
Can't wait to come visit and see what you guys have done in person.
Yeah.
Good.
Well,
Maybe you can stay a couple weeks extra and throw up a building or two.
You guys
gonna
want
say-
a hemp house on there somewhere, right?
Well, that's why we're actually working on a modular system. I worked in that industry, modular homes, and we shipped homes around. It was a company up in Massachusetts. We shipped homes around the world, and they were fairly high-end homes that could be put up. I also worked in timber frame home companies, and they're also pretty fast to build because you essentially build it in a factory type of setting in a controlled environment, and then when it gets to the building site, it can be put together much faster. I think the industry right now is shifting towards that in general. You've got the boxables and you've got these other things and the tiny homes and all of that. But I think what's happening, because it's meeting a need, and that need is people want to put up, and there's a more need for housing. And then there's a lot more people buying land and looking to build, and they're finding that they can't find contractors to build. They've got, they don't want to take on projects. They've got too much work. There's not enough people, like you said, Bear, who are learning the trades anymore because it's not an enticing industry. So, how do we create a modular home system, building system that can go up on the land in a much more time efficient way, which time is money on the building site. And, projects get delayed because of weather, because of materials, because of all these different things, as you know. And then, something you thought was going to take 6 months, taking 18 months and you're twice the budget. It's crazy. Construction can be really derail a lot of things and a lot of plans. So we're focused on that. And it feels like that's really possible to create a decentralized kind of system where you have a processing facility in an agricultural area that's processing the materials into a bunch of different products, essentially. You have a facility that can build panels with hemp or blocks or a combination. You have, the agronomic side of it. You have the food side of it, and really you can support a decentralized economy through agriculture in this way. And I think this could be like a really big change for how we look at getting back to the land in these ways. And excuse me. I think the educational side of it is that channel to bring new innovators to that space. Because I think that's what's going to shape a positive future, is like bringing people into a place which feels really open for education and innovation. And obviously why the trade school, but we're also launching our other business called Biohouse, which for me was, I got inspired with that name Biohouse from Bauhaus. Which is, is the German, it was Walter Gropius set up this Bauhaus in Germany. And it was basically, it was interesting timing because it was in 1919 that he first started the Bauhaus movement. It was about bringing architecture and the arts to the people, because before then, only people who ever worked with an architect or a designer were the elite, were the aristocracy. And so he wanted, as an architect, to bring all of the sculptors and the painters and the artists and the architects together in this movement called the Bauhaus. to create art and to create architecture for the people. And ironically, they started during the Spanish flu at that time, and people were wearing masks. And then, they got shut down by the Nazis. Essentially, they kept moving their facility, their educational place, and they eventually got shut down. And I think it was like 34 or something like that, because they were bringing something that was really about freedom. So we're kind of essentially doing a similar thing. Is really like, how do we use this plant to create a power to the people moment where we as artists and creators and innovators can create a new parallel kind of model that can work in a decentralized way. So we're excited about that. There's a lot of innovation in the space right now about modular systems, but we're really focused on doing it.
And we were just, one of our brand partners is there in Mexico, and hemp isn't as accessible because it's not in every other part of the world. Right now it's coming online in the States, and they're using the agave plant and coconut shells and different things in combination. So there is, that space for things to not just be hemp. But I think it's important what you had mentioned earlier, Bear, like the transition from like what a CBD hemp market to industrial hemp, because they're two different plants. And people were growing way more of the CBD hemp that we needed to extract that little amount of oil. Whereas the industrial hemp, we need so many farmers growing thousands of acres to be able to create all of the products that are coming in, the new plastics and the homes and the fibers. So we can't have enough of farmers growing the industrial hemp, and getting farmers who were burnt in that other industry to understand that this is different, and the quantity that we need is massive. It's like, and that's also simultaneously regenerating the soil and moving a lot of these monocrop farmers that are using Monsanto crops to heal their soils, which is really great, because they weren't doing it because of that, because they were doing it, for the bottom line, but it's achieving multiple things at the same time. So there's so many beautiful overlays of how this plant is healing on so many different levels. But I think making that distinction between people that maybe are familiar with it being medicinal, like you said, when it was really, really growing and becoming popular, to like where it's going right now, the trajectory.
A lot of the farmers are actually really reluctant in a way to grow industrial hemp, because they are so nervous around the CBD thing and what happened. A lot of farmers got burned with promises of making a ton of money growing CBD, and then they basically lost. They just had fields of biomass they couldn't do anything with.
We saw that up here in Southern Oregon for sure.
Yeah.
And I wish we could come up with a better word than industrial hemp, because industrial automatically kind of alludes to big capitalistic monocropping marketplaces, and we talk about decentralization. I was saying in the chat here, I mean, just imagine like with all the blighted urban centers, if those were just completely canvassed with hemp gardens and hemp bioremediation allotments that were put out by the cities or whatnot. And not only now do you have ability for people to have a job growing this amazing plant, but then all the use cases of it. So I'm wondering if it's like a pragmatic hemp or some other term that, because I know we want to differentiate from the CBD, which is like
it's hard because so many people have
to
stigmas around hemp, and we have to differentiate so people know that we're talking about. Most people don't know that there's these different strains and different uses for the plant, because actually, Bear, was thinking about when you're saying how it's grown. So this hemp that we're talking about grows really tall like bamboo, not short bushy buds, but it's massive.
More like a sativa.
It's tall and close together. So it has to be grown in a certain way that it has long fibers. So it is a different plant, but how to distinguish that, because most people are still associating everything with CBD.
Definitely love to find a way to change that narrative around industrial, because I think it does put it on a trajectory towards something that maybe we're not interested in. So, there's farmers in Kansas who we went to visit, and they were more monoculture growers, Monsanto corn and all of that. And they wanted to get out of that, but they kind of were trapped. And I think a lot of the farmers are trapped by, being able to insure their crop and all of these other things. So they started and they kind of teamed up and they set up a processing facility
And a co-op.
for hemp, industrial hemp processing, let's call it. I don't know how else to call it, but and so within, you know, 100-mile radius of that facility, now they can
13 farms.
pitch to the farmers, okay, you can start growing some hemp, and they're showing them a model of how that could actually benefit them financially, as well as
And growing in
help-
between crops.
help to heal their soil as a cover crop. And that's working, definitely.
Because they're
So,
starting to see
can
that
you
they're
el-
making profit from the hemp without losing the security of what they're used to.
Can you elaborate any more on how it heals the soil? Because I've never grown it, so I don't know what attributes, you know, it adds to the soil, or are you just more alluding to the fact that it would take over some of the other kind of less healthy crops that are being grown?
I think it just like in the walls, it's a very porous material in the stalk. So it's, you know, and it has a very deep root system. So it's able to get down deep into the soil and pull nutrients up out of the soil, also toxins out of the soil. I heard some information that they'd done some tests in like Chernobyl with hemp crop to see how it could remediate the soil, and was it within 3 cycles of growing, they were testing pure. It was testing untainted after 3. So it was drawing it out. What they were able to do with that hemp afterwards, the ones that were toxic, I'm not sure exactly. Maybe they had to.
And actually, I think you didn't hear it, but at the NOCO conference, there was a lot more research that's just come out on how quickly the soils are transitioning, where they're pulling out the heavy metals and the toxins. I don't have the exact numbers, but I probably could get my hands on it. I think, I don't know if Tim Fine was talking about, but there was someone that was specifically citing all of the new research that's coming out. And again, part of that is probably because hemp wasn't legalized to grow. Now that it is, the research is going to be more and more.
Yeah, we're only 4 years in since the Farm Bill of 2018. So this is like so new. And I know it aerates the soil. And then I know it has the bioremediation of pulling heavy metals out. And then also I know just in the last 2 years, those farms you're talking about, the monocroppers that are introducing them as cover crops, are finding that their yields are increasing because of the soil health increasing. So it's a magical plant. It's like, it's just so much, like when we go back to decentralization, I mean, just imagine having, you know, each homestead having a certain allotment of hemp, where, because we talk about regeneration all the time. It's like the biggest buzzword. And, you know, I find it ironic that they're talking about carbon credits when literally it's the hydrocarbon industry, the Rockefeller, the Hearst, that took out the carbohydrate paradigm that was hemp. Ford was using hemp to fuel cars. Like it was, you know, and then the big deal was, of course, we lost hemp because it was taking slave. If you know the history of hemp, it's really fascinating. Like it was 85% of paper was all hemp based up into the 1800s. Now, as you guys were alluding to, it takes a lot of work to process hemp. And so they were using slave labor in the United States and the colonies up until the Civil War. And then when the slaves were finally emancipated, it was a lot costlier. And then you had the cotton gin. So cotton kind of took over. But then in 1913 or around then, the, what was it called? The decorticator was invented. I forgot the gentleman's name. And now hemp came back, but already now we had a massive industry built around paper, built around, of course, now Rockefeller and the oil industry. And so they had the reefer madness.
Hearst was,
and
the Hearst newspaper industry was very prominent in that whole movement as well.
Exactly. So they had the act in 1937, I believe, which was the Hemp Tax Act or whatever, that made it basically illegal. So that's sort of the history. But how ironic is it that it was literally the hydrocarbon petrochemical carbon company that took it out, and now they're trying to say it's carbon credits for hemp. They're inverting it and doing the same trickery again. So if we want to really be regenerative, we have to have regenerative economic systems, right? We can't be on these scarcity tokenized systems where it's all centrally controlled. And so that drives me crazy. Like you guys were saying, when you go to these very lefty, liberal minded, well, well, not liberal, but they call themselves liberal, you know what I mean, mindsets in the hemp world and the permaculture world, and they're being sort of blindsided by this carbon credit thing, which drives me crazy. So like if we could have that independence, but through decentralized marketplaces built around hemp, because hemp at one point in the colonies was actually used as a currency. It was used to trade. Imagine having the hemp dollar, right? And building a valuation on our how we transact with hemp itself, or even decentralizing and tokenizing that through something like Cordal, which is what I work on, but having the ability to truly be decentralized and regenerative with our actual economic means by being completely self-sustainable, using hemp as one of the mainstays besides new energy and stuff. That's where it's exciting, guys. So if you're listening to this and you're still believing in the carbon credit nonsense, wake up to that, because it is a nasty, nasty agenda. And that's my rant.
Love it.
Thank you, Mike. You said what's in my heart. So and I think the other thing that kind of I feel is important to go back to is, creating these parallel systems that are going to, kind of move into the forefront as these old systems start to just not be able to operate in the change in the frequencies. And they're just going to be, kind of take all of that old stuff, negative stuff with them in a way, is the opportunity to come back to the land. Because, I saw a lot of dysfunctionality in our mindset about creating, let's say, eco villages or eco communities. There's a lot of trauma around that. You talk about that in the freedom community about, oh, we're going to create a community, and they're like, oh my God,
So much PTSD.
it's like traumatized, and maybe that was intentional, that it can't function. But I definitely saw that a lot of people, when they look to go back to the land in any form of kind of community living, there tends to be a lot of idealism, and almost like an abandonment of the system. They're like, it's almost like a reaction to the system, that they're so traumatized from it that they just want to escape. And I think what we saw was that they weren't really seeing that the economic side of things isn't a bad thing. It's not bad to have abundance in so many different forms, whether that's a blockchain or whatever that turns out to be. And hemp really is very abundant. It kind of feels like it's economically very abundant, in the sense that you can kind of grow it in that area. There's a lot less inputs needed, and it just feels like really, really relevant that we're also creating different ways of thinking about building and how we eat, but our communities as well, and how we kind of dwell together. I feel it's important. You want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's we came together in a way with an online community, right? In a time where people were being intentionally separated from each other, and there was this. I think the shift that's happened in the last couple of years has really given people a more realistic picture of what's going on. So I think, to the earlier point, how we recreate this is really important, because if there's a tendency to just pretend that it's not happening and go back to the old ways, we're going to end up with more of the same. And so we're bringing a lot of intention into not just the structures, but even the infrastructure of how we're coming together, and the partnerships that we're creating. We try not to use the word community, but or development, all these, as we're defining these new ways. But I think ultimately we know we need to come back to the land, and we know that the lone wolf model is not going to work, that we need to find ways to be together and to create that economy. Whereas, so for example, in our model, there's not just one garden where we're feeding everyone, but everyone is having their own garden and doing animal husbandry to contribute to that economics, right? And I love that you use that regenerative economics, term, Mike, because if we don't go back with this idea of abundance, and we're going into fear, and we're in scarcity, it will be really hard to create this new model. And so, it's knowing that there's an abundance and that we are sharing in that abundance collectively, that we each play a part. And we, somebody might be mastering the bees and somebody might be mastering growing tomatoes or whatever it is, that it's going to take a group of people from what we're learning. And this is having lots of conversations, interviewing lots of people like you guys do, that we need to be bringing in the people specifically in those areas that are already doing what we need to learn how to do. That's one really important part of our equation. And then being able to give people the opportunity to get their hands on to come and do it. So we host these return to the land events where we're teaching that. And of course, we have the hands-on hemping class. And when we secure the land, people will be coming and learning how to grow food. So I think that model being educational based, if we don't talk about we're going to be in an intentional community where people think I'm escaping or it's a gated and I'm separated from, versus we're coming together around a trade school where we're learning these skills that we have forgotten, or we're growing our own food. I think that shifting that context makes it more able for people to be like, oh yeah, that's something that feels aligned with where I'm going. So yeah, that's one of the things that we've come up against. And
I had some experience in the 70s with intentional communities. And after a few months, my wife and myself hightailed out because we realized everybody was there for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
And also nobody had any skill sets or any money. So,
right. That's what we hear.
So we bounced. But, here in the colonies, that's how we originally started, was just, number one, it was based on freedom. You can do whatever the heck you want. This is your little plot. You stake out your claim. And if there's 3 tailors already in town, you don't open up a tailor shop, you do something else. So communities are very intuitive and they just should organically evolve. And one other experience we had in our brief time in an intentional community is we spent an inordinate amount of time having meetings.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like,
were those
okay,
naked
when do we get
were those naked meetings?
Yeah, right. I wish.
In the hot tub?
Yeah.
But yeah, so you don't need meetings, everybody just figures out what their purpose in life is, what floats their boat, what gives you joy, and then you go out and you do it. And typically, if you're in a region where there's so many of different types, you figure out something where you're going to make your own way and not just, be watered down by 6 other people doing the same thing on the same block. You don't really have to plan that much.
Yeah. I was going to say also just look to indigenous culture, they understand the idea of mentorship. They understand the idea of honoring the elder class and having smaller communities. I know there's been multiple studies at different universities showing that when you go larger than 500 people, it breaks down into chaos. So we're meant to be, in smaller communities like that. I believe that is the future. You guys, Imani, you had mentioned Charles is going to be speaking soon, Charles Eisenstein. He's been a great thinker in talking about the future of how we have the macro sort of organization of the planet. The nation state does go away potentially, and instead we have sort of bioregions, and that kind of even triggers people, I know, because that gets into like UN agenda stuff. But if you do it decentralized and you do it where it's based on freedom and sovereignty, then that makes a lot more sense, where we have pockets of decentralized little communities that then have ability to connect through technology and be actually now in charge of their lives and being responsible grown-ups too, because we know the way the system has been set, it's raised a bunch of basically grown-up kids that were the ones going back to the land bear looking to have their problems solved. So
So in the remaining time, I'd like to go full circle back to hemp here. With a lot of building materials that I'm familiar with, some are good for some kind of climate, some, not so good. Is there any area or climatic conditions that hemp wouldn't be best suited for?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that get asked quite a lot. It does really well in cold climates, because it's insulative qualities that it has, and also it has a thermal a mass quality, which is really interesting and not that common in building materials to have both insulative and thermal mass quality, which gives it an ability to create a kind of a equilibrium in the indoor environment. So if it's cold outside, it will keep it in the 60s generally, and then if it's hot outside, it because it has that thermal mass quality, more like a masonry, it's able to keep it cooler inside. We've built in several different climates. One thing we heard recently was that in a very kind of tropical, very humid climate, you have to be careful about how thick you build your walls, because we typically like to build around a foot thick walls, or it can be even more than that, because it allows it to kind of build, kind of take in the moisture, take in the vapor, and regulate that environment, and also for the thermal qualities. But when it's a very humid environment outside, a thick wall will tend to draw the humidity in to the not so humid environment inside, to kind of create that balance. So you have to, just be conscious. And typically you don't need that thicker wall in a tropical environment because it's not that cold. So it makes sense logically. So you would probably do, like a 7 or 8 inch thick wall in a much more humid climate, so that it doesn't start to draw in moisture into the space, but it's still able to, regulate that indoor environment. It does well in dry climates. I think the one of the challenges with it is as it is now, and because we're working with natural materials, not like Portland cement, which just cures very fast, but then it doesn't breathe. With the kind of a Roman type of cement, which is the hydrated lime, which you can buy pretty standard anyway, and the pozzolans, the binders, it takes some time to cure. So this cure period of, a month,
So it could be up to 10 years, it's still curing.
Yeah, but the immediate curing to the point where you could finish it with like a plaster or something like that can be from 4 to 6 weeks. So it's just understanding you during that time, you need to make sure that the walls can, because they're releasing a lot of moisture. You're mixing, every mix you're making, you're putting 10 gallons of water into the mixer with with 40 pounds of hemp, and then a 50-pound bag of lime and some minerals. That's all in the walls, that's all in your structure, all that moisture, and you want to get it out of there inherently, so it can cure back to a stone type of consistency. So it's, I think what's happening in the space right now is they're trying to close that gap with the curing time, because that is definitely one of the things that's stopping it from becoming more mainstream adopted. Because you can't do nothing on a building site for 6 weeks. It's detrimental to the project, to the timeline and the budget. So
but the concern is there that as they create these structural quick drying products, that they'll lose the breathability of that block. And that's the thing that we're looking for, blocks that continue to have the health benefits of it being a breathing system. And some of what we heard at this expo was like, well, as long as we're using hemp to make these blocks, it doesn't matter if they breathe, because we're using hemp, and that's good for the planet. So yeah. The concern, and really where River's taking a stance, is making sure that it is a breathing system.
Yeah.
So it can happen just like, so many other things that, we know go out there.
So I mean, I think it can, to your question, be used pretty much anywhere. I think you've just like anything really, especially anything that's natural. I think you've just got to be cognizant that it has some different factors that you need to consider when you're working with it. And they've been using it in Europe for a few decades now. Yeah. And that's a pretty humid, moist climate in England anyway. There's a lot of rain there. There's a lot of moisture in the environment. So it does have a great capacity to handle the moisture. We just want to be careful in them humid environments that we don't create an issue indoors,
Great. Thank you on that. Now I know you guys have an event to get to. So
yeah, Del Big Tree just walked by. So that was his loud voice in the background, but yeah,
okay,
my battery.
So, all right. We'll let you go, but in the last couple of minutes, anything, final comments, things that we didn't cover that you'd like to, and maybe last opportunity to tell folks where they can find you once again.
Yeah, we have a couple different places. I mean, we mentioned our private membership association. So we have havenearth.net is our network where we really like to connect people. We have a Telegram channel, which is the Haven Earth Trade School. So that's more for updates and a community one. If people are interested in kind of seeing how these houses are built, we've got a lot of videos up on our Instagram. So we're still in that world, just because it's a good way to really get out the hemp message, the education. So on Instagram, we have one Haven Earth PMA and then Haven Earth Trade School. That'll bring in not only the hemp building, but some of the regenerative agriculture things. Like we're just putting up a course on Mittlighter gardening with one of our partners at Texas Ready. So we're really been interested in learning that, and horizontal beekeeping and PMAs and private structures and land trusts. So we have that. But if people are interested in working with River on like kind of the master plan designs or blueprints or the biohouse modular designs, that one is going to be found on havenearth.biz. The online trade school is havenearthtradeschool.net. So
Yeah.
we have a lot of different places that you can catch up with us.
Right. And to add to that, I think, you know, I'm not generally working on like custom home projects, design projects per se, because really want to hit a more help support a lot more people than just, you know, one client per, you know, every 6 months or something like that. So I've been putting together blueprints for smaller structures, as little as a non-permitted 120 square foot hexagonal space, which actually we had
Be a great healing hut.
We just met somebody, a hemp builder at the conference, who actually built one of them in Canada from my blueprint that someone bought last year. So it was really great to see that someone could buy a blueprint for pennies on the dollar of
interject though, because you know, we talked about the homes. Like if you had a home and you only wanted to, or only able to renovate a certain room, River has always said make it be the bedroom so that you're sleeping in this space. And when he was talking about kind of revisioning these ways that we think of home design, you're kind of relabeling that one area, would you say, sort of as a recharge station? Because imagine getting a healing session or sleeping in a room that's EMF free, right? Because you're creating that kind of space that's going to really reset your entire nervous system. Again, working in complete alignment with the energy of the plants. So if you can't do the whole house, and there's other things coming out like hemp wool, which doesn't have the same frequency or insulation value, let's say, of the plant when you use it in that more dense form. But there's different ways that you could incorporate. Maybe your whole house isn't hemp, is my point. You know, that you could take a certain area and incorporate that, or do a little structure on your property to make one of these healing hexagonal huts that you can, you know, use for that kind of work.
Yeah, there's a whole lot more I'd really like to talk to you guys about. Maybe we can do a part 2 someday in the near future. Imani, what you were just talking about, I'd like to kind of get into the weeds more with that kind of thing, and incorporating other technologies, you know, where we can create angles and improve the resonance that's already in the natural materials. And so that's kind of what floats me. So this has been amazing. Thank you so much, you guys. And you're doing such a fantastic service, and we appreciate you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you guys for having us on. It was nice to connect with Mike in person, and we look to come visit you soon.
Yeah, I really appreciate, you know, what you're saying, Bear, that what you guys are doing, actually.
Yeah.
You know, what you guys are doing to give a platform for people like us who are, you know, kind of going against the grain right now. And you know, really for the people, I think this is, you know, a moment for us to do what we come here to do. It's a really purposeful time, and I really encourage anybody who's thinking about hemp and who's kind of resonating with that there is so many opportunities in this space, not just building, to get into this industry. And we really welcome you into our community, because we have a lot of people in our online community, in our network, that are excited about this. And you know, we had one 7-year-old lady, I'll just share the story really quickly, but she came to our workshop almost 2 years ago in New Mexico. A little hemp building workshop I did to build a porta-john, like a hemp porta-john type of thing. I called it a a poo with a view. It was on the lake anyway. And but yeah, she came. She was too old to build, but she wrote a lot of notes, and she was sitting there, and I was kind of wondering why she's here. And then lo and behold, she went off and started growing hemp. She found
farmland
seeds
in Kansas.
She had farmland.
Family land.
Yep, she had all this farmland in Kansas. She went out and started growing hemp. She was so inspired. She is circled back around a year later to actually become part of our network. She just believes so much in this plant. She doesn't know why.
One of the investors in our biohouse and waiting for a biohouse to be built.
Right. There is something about this plant right now that's for us to make a move into a much healthier paradigm. And we feel super blessed to have the opportunity to share that here with you guys, and appreciate everything you're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, brilliant. We do what we do because there's a lot of despairing people out there right now. So we, like many other independent podcasters and so forth, we're just bringing all the voices that are actually making the change and letting all the folks that are less optimistic know that we've already won.
Yes.
It's already a done deal. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Beautiful. Hey, this is amazing. And by the way, really enjoyed your book, Imani,
Thank
The
you.
Present Soil. I read it on the flight home, actually, from
Ooh,
Greater
I have to get
Reset.
that.
And it's just really, she gave this to me signed at the Greater Reset this year when I was there. And
Oh, great. Yeah.
really
gotta get it.
inspiring
Thank
book,
you.
because we talk about finding your art and finding your vocation, and you both of you guys are great examples of that, and that you found your art through your life of giving to others, and that is the technology you bring out to people, and that is the revolution. It's the inner revolution that's happening, and we're seeing it everywhere on all walks of life. So this was a very inspirational talk, and I hope you guys listening got a lot out of it. And please go to the show notes below to check out the link to the havenearthtradeschool.net link we have there to look into the class if you're interested in starting to learn more about this, and havenearth.biz as well. And there's Little Puppy, the new addition to the Lando clan.
This is
and-
Bella. She's actually named after my mother, Bella.
And she will be being put to
Anyway.
work out in the shepherding my
So
kids
cute.
around, probably when they come visit. Hey guys, thanks so much. Well, I'll let you get
All
back to
right.
the conference.
Thank you.
And we'll talk to you guys soon. You're welcome to come stay, just holler if you want to come up and visit the summer
Sounds
or
good.
whatnot, or if you want to come out to Music and Sky, give me a shout. We'd love to see you there. And remember,
Awesome.
guys, get outside, get your feet in the dirt, go plant something, go for a hike, go ground with Mother Nature. She is the greatest teacher. Go show her some love. And we'll see you back here Thursday at 10 a.m. with the great Marty Leeds. He'll be here. We'll be talking about his new book about astrotheology. He will be speaking at Music and Sky this year. He's a brother from another mother. So stoked to have Marty back on. So see you back here at 10 a.m. Thursday. Love you guys. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.